entrepreneurs are supermen, right? We can do it all. Man, nothing hurts us. Nothing stops us. We just keep going through everything. And then we get knocked down and we get back up and we get knocked down and we get back up and nothing, we just don't quit. But it hurts. And all that getting knocked down and getting back up and trying again takes its toll. You know it does. And it takes its toll not only on you, but on your family, on your business, on your employees, everything. We're going to talk about that. We're going to talk about stress and burnout and what gets in the way of entrepreneurial success with Dr. Manuel Astruc next on Dash of Grit.
This is a Dash of Grit. Recipes for success from courageous leaders who overcome challenges and build great things. Now, podcasting from Spire to leaders in local communities like yours, here is Brian Leflock.
And let's get cooking. So I'm excited about today's guest. A lot of times people ask me, when they ask me anything at all, they will ask, hey, how do you find your guests? And we've been doing this for almost a year now here on Dash of Grit, and that's a lot of guests. And most of them come as friends or referrals from friends. And that's an easy way to meet people and business relationships and acquaintances that I've built over the years, many years. And so I'm thankful to them. It's also LinkedIn, and it's referrals from folks on LinkedIn. It's a great relationship building tool. The reason I tell you this is because I met Dr. Astruc, who you're about to meet, on LinkedIn. And I looked at his profile and it said general adult psychiatrist and coach for high achievers. And I said, okay, fine. There's a lot of those folks. Okay. I dug a little bit deeper and it says this: serving entrepreneurs who suffer from self-inflicted sabotage. And I said, holy cow, that's Dash of Grit. And so I was thrilled to Justin Breen for the referral. And I'm thrilled to meet and let all of our folks here at Dash of Grit meet Dr. Manuel Astruc. Dr. Astruc, welcome to Dash of Grit.
Man, it's such a pleasure to be here. Thank you so much for having me.
It's a pleasure to have you. And I'm excited to hear and share your story because I know self-inflicted entrepreneurialism, it's almost the same thing. A lot of entrepreneurs say, oh, I'm an entrepreneur. I'm crazy. I've got my stuff. And so we can be our own worst enemy. So I'm excited to learn more about that. And so before we do, Dash of Grit is all about pain and struggles and hurt and burnout and things that we're going to talk about. But let's first talk about success. Dr. Astruc, what can you share with me? What are you proudest about? Tell me about what you're doing now with your next act, your coaching business, and as a general psychiatrist. What are you most proud of?
So there's probably two big things right now. In my psychiatric practice for many, many years, I was what Dan Sullivan from Strategic Coach calls a rugged individualist. So okay. I wanted to keep things simple and drama-free, so I just worked hard by myself. And recently, I discovered the absolute joy and pleasure of having collaborators on board. So I hired 2 nurse practitioners about a year ago, and it's just been something that I guess you do what you need to when you're ready, but I wish I'd done that 6-7 years ago. It's been great. Mm-hmm. And then the second thing is in my coaching business, 4 years ago, I made a decision to start putting out my own content. So for many years, I was learning and listening to other people on podcasts and audiobooks. And 4 years ago, I started a daily morning musing on Facebook. And this morning, Facebook showed me a memory from 4 years ago, and it was just so much fun listening to myself from 4 years ago. And it was a timeless message that, my third morning musings that I did was really, really good.
Your third one. And isn't that something? So entrepreneurs start, and all we can think about is the future, but then all the hurdles that are right now, and a lot of folks won't start. What they don't think about, right, is that one specific moment when you look back and you see, and you weren't aware of that third thing that you did. And now you look back and you're like, holy cow, I'm so glad I took that step. I mean, is that accurate for an entrepreneur?
100%. And the other piece that's so interesting was I remember those early days, how hard I was on myself with how I was coming across and what I was saying, what I forgot to say and how I meant to say it. Like all I could think of was how I wanted to sound and how I wasn't there. But listening to it today, I was like, oh, that's pretty good.
Not so bad.
I was impressed.
We get in our own way, don't we? Holy cow. We think we have an idea, but we're not good enough. We can't do
I'm
the
not
thing
good
that
enough.
someone else can do.
Right.
And you look back and you sure could. And boy, a lot of people don't even give that start. They don't even have a chance to look back. And so they don't know what they're missing. So,
Right.
so Dr. Astruc, I am just thrilled to know. I'm excited to talk about the self-sabotage and things of entrepreneurs. But I think to get there, let's learn about you. I want to learn about your growth. I want to learn about hurdles that you had to overcome. I want to talk about grit that you had to overcome to get to the successful place that you are now.
And Brian, what I'm going to do first is I'm going to take off my Dr. Astruc hat and I'm going to put on my coaching hat, because when I'm in my psychiatric role with patients and with others, we do not self-reveal. The standard of care is that it's all about the person who's sitting across from me and their pain and their struggles, and we don't interject with our own. It's just a boundary that we maintain. But in coaching, it's a little bit different. It's not all about me, but it's helpful in coaching to reveal. And that's what you're asking me to do. And it's what I'm here for.
Yes,
so it was September 2008, and I was completely burnt out.
And 2008 was a hard year in the first place.
Yeah. So I had a very successful psychiatric practice. I was as busy as I could be. I had accomplished all the goals that I wanted to, but I was just miserable. I was emotionally exhausted. I was cynical, and I wasn't feeling effective at my job. And the month before, in August of 2008, my twin sister, Magdalena, had passed away from a brain tumor that she'd suffered with. And she had really shown me how to live while she was suffering from a brain tumor. She smiled every day. She was grateful every day. And the next month, I was staring at a picture of her, and she was beaming in this picture. And I really made a commitment. It was so striking how miserable I was, and I was healthy and successful. And she had shown such a great attitude while she was sick that I had to make a change. I drew a line in the sand. There was a moment of truth. And I had to commit to enjoying the ride no matter what. And that's what I proceeded to do over the next 12 years to get myself to here.
And so before we get there, I'm interested, and I hope I'm not prying too much. Were you burnt out already while your sister was alive and showing you how to live? Were you already burnt out and didn't know it? Or was there, what caused the burnout, and what caused you to realize how burnt out you were?
It's a great question. Burnout happens over time. It's not like getting appendicitis, right? So you're fine, and then you have appendicitis, right?
Right.
So it's something that develops over time. So I had been progressively more burnout, and it starts. I'll use the analogy of height. Like we know when someone's tall. Like if they're 7 feet tall, they're tall, but there's not a sharp cutoff where now you're tall. Like was it 6'2"? Is it 6'4"? Is it 6'6"? So with a lot of things, including burnout, it's not a sharp on-off. It's a progressive getting worse and worse and worse.
It's like the frog in the boiling water.
Yeah, exactly. So
Okay.
I was in the process of feeling more and more miserable for probably years before, that moment in time when it was really, kind of the life-altering moment of really coming to terms with, I've got to do something.
And can you look back and identify what was causing the burnout? I think our listeners might want to know, what was he feeling?
Yeah, so absolutely. The factors that are, I'll tell you for me what they were, and then like in general, what they tend to be.
Mm-hmm. Yes.
So for me, I was facing financial hardships, and 6 kids, college coming up, there was a lot of stress and anxiety. The way that I had dealt with financial troubles was by opening up more work hours. Like what I knew how to do was to work harder. So that's the self-inflicted sabotage, right? So when when I was in high school and then college and then med school, what I always relied on was working harder.
Your ability to do more. Yeah.
Yeah, I can think back to McDonald's. When I was 16, I started working at McDonald's, and I found out that if I punched in a little bit early, I'd get a little more money. If I worked a little harder, it was like ka-ching.
Yeah.
And I thought I had like discovered something amazing and I could volunteer for more hours, and then there'll be more money at the end of it. But that's a strategy that doesn't work that long. So I was working longer and longer hours. I was not getting the financial freedom and the rewards that were allowing me to make changes in my lifestyle to back off. So the dream was always to have more freedom of time. The work that I was doing that I do every day is challenging work, high demand with potentially catastrophic problems if I mess up. Right. So I'm dealing with people who are depressed and suicidal, or, students who are, stressed out, and we don't know, what they're going through. It's an age where lots of things can get, topsy-turvy in many ways. So it's a very stressful position to be in, and we only have so much control. So a lack of feeling control, a lack of feeling that gratification, you're just focused on like the stress of it all, and more time spent in work to solve the problem rather than taking the time off to think about the problem.
And so you're still in that spot, though. So you're ready to transition. You realize that you're burnt out, but you still got, I think you said 6 kids. You've still got college bills. You've still got the job and all the needs. And so how do you understand how to pivot, and how do you make that decision to change?
So what I did was to start with the things I could control. And I knew something had to change. I didn't know what it was. And a couple of things fell out, but the immediate actions that I took was to take the focus off of all those things, the bills, the worries, the business, the stress. And I put the focus on those things that I could change. And it's really all about like trying to get my energy back up. So I focused on starting to exercise again. So I had exercise habits that would last a week, where I'd hit the gym hard, an hour at a time, and I'd be so happy, and it would last about a week. And what I started doing this time around was saying, I'm going to do 5 minutes every day. And then when I'm able to do 5 minutes every day for a protected period of time, so it was like a couple of push-ups, a couple of crunches, a couple of jumping jacks. But once I'm doing that every single day, and there's no excuse not to do 5 minutes, I can go to 10 minutes or 15 minutes. So I built up an exercise process that I've continued.
Okay.
I focused on eating better. My diet was just absolutely less than ideal. And rather than change it all at once, I just focused on one meal. I changed my breakfast. And I said, there'll be more changes that I can make, but I'm just going to start with one thing that I can sustain, and then I'll add on that. I cut out negativity. I cut out news. I cut out my morning sports radio, which I loved. I love, sports, and I love excellence, but there was just too much negativity and drama. And I replaced
You're preaching to the choir here. I've done those things too, as far as getting rid of negativity, turning off the sports. There's no place for it anymore. Okay, go ahead.
And I picked up things like this, like podcasts and audiobooks, things that help to inspire me and to motivate me. And I developed a desire for a bigger future. And I didn't know what that was going to look like. Like initially I thought that what I wanted was more money. So it was like business ideas, and I could do this or I could do that. It was starting to think about a way out of my predicament that was not just working harder, it was working different. And the business stuff was the first iteration. I found that money was not a good motivator for me, even though it seemed like it was the problem. What ended up really inspiring me to start to make changes. And let me just put parentheses around that. my life today doesn't look that much different. I still work a lot of hours, but my attitude's like very, very different. I got inspired to, help people to make changes in their life, help more people to help more people. But it was an inspiration about transformation for others.
And so before we talk, and I'm interested in that part, I want to know one more thing from you though, because I talk with a lot of folks and entrepreneurs very similar. I'm gonna start this thing. I'm not going to see the benefits for quite a while. So here you are, burnt out, struggling, working too many hours, just putting yourself all in the wrong spot. You make a decision. I mean, is it that easy, or did it had to have caused some pain along the way to focus on yourself as opposed to just working more hours? Did you ever question what you were trying to do to get out of that state?
So for me at that point, it was that easy.
Okay.
The reality is that I'd been so miserable for so long.
There was just no other option.
That the commitment to something has to change.
Yeah.
And the commitment to enjoy the ride. The other thing that happened with that commitment for me in thinking about my sister was that I put up blinders to my own negative thinking. I did not allow myself to go down that rabbit hole of, money, stress, work hours, nothing's ever going to be different. All the negative chatter that I would wallow in, like it would still come up. It still comes up, but I put up blinders and said, I'm just not going to pay attention to it. It's all about, focusing on what I can do. I'm going to work out. I'm going to eat. I'm going to think about the future. And in those blinders and that commitment that I'm going to really focus on enjoying things. Magdalena could do that. When she had brain cancer and 4 kids, I can do that.
Yeah, so she was an inspiration. She was living that life, and without her, you saw a void, and you were able to step in, and that impacted you.
Yeah, so such an inspiration. She was such an inspiration.
And yet you weren't able. Why did it take, and again, if I'm too personal, tell me, I'll move on to something else, but why did it take her passing for you to realize how burnt out you were and how you needed to follow in those steps?
I think that we all hit bottoms. So I was probably, there were multiple places in that there were opportunities to have a paradigm shift. So for instance, if we go back years, I had problems with alcohol and, ultimately stopped drinking. I'm an alcoholic. And there were many times that alcohol caused problems in my life. Like, why did that particular time that I decided that I was going to stop? Like, what message, my wife said, something's got to change, or so we get those moments. We get those moments of pain where we can make a transformation, a paradigm shift, and change things in our lives. And oftentimes we ignore that, right? So I probably had multiple times that I could have had that, but things were getting more and more painful. And it was literally looking at a picture of her after she'd passed away, where it was the line in the sand, and it's like, no more.
And so if we move forward, then you're working with these folks and you've got yourself on a right plane. Do entrepreneurs come to you when they're at the bottom? Do you help them get to the bottom and see what that looks like? Tell me how you work with these folks who are trying to accomplish the making themselves better, making their businesses better, things like that.
So this process for me has been 12 years in the making. And about 4 years ago is when I doubled down on going into coaching. Over those 12 years, there were a lot of what I call adjacent possibles, where I tried small projects that were like learning leadership and trying to teach leadership, which I really believe in. But I couldn't, as a psychiatrist, sell leadership, right? So these adjacent possibles were projects that required not a huge investment of time or money, but I would try them out. And ultimately making the decision to go into coaching came after I read Brene Brown's Daring Greatly and the Man in the Arena speech, which I just kind of blew my mind.
Yes, sir.
I said, I've got to get in the arena, because the idea of coaching was in my mind, but I was afraid of what people would think. So I'm a professional, I'm a psychiatrist. Going into coaching in my mind meant taking a step backwards, getting into something that was the Wild West. But I had an aspiration to, in psychiatry, we help people get from not functioning at their baseline back to their baseline. Coaching is about following the next trail of dreams and getting people to perform at their highest levels in the ways that they want to. And I said, yeah, that's a worthwhile pursuit. So I started with groups of my clients who were interested in the next level.
And next
Many
step.
people were not. And this was a very general group of folks. And I ran that for a year and a half before COVID hit. And in all the marketing lessons that I have learned and listened to and talked to marketers, everyone says you've got to niche down. So I was always afraid of niching down. But the folks that I really loved working with were entrepreneurs. Entrepreneurs get stuff done. They invest in themselves. They've generally got a growth mindset.
They want that next step. Yes.
And they want that next step. So they're hungry to help themselves get there. And I just loved working with them. So when COVID hit, I shut down my live local workshops, and I had an aspiration to work with entrepreneurs, but I thought it was going to be like a 5-year journey to get myself like ready to do that. And I said, it's time to double down and start working with entrepreneurs. So I'm working right now one-to-one with people who've heard of me. And it's been one-to-one referrals from people that know me so far. And what I do is we start off with, kind of real classic stuff. Where are you? Where do you want to be? And what's in your way?
And typically, where are they? When entrepreneurs come to you, what kind of grit do they need to show? Where are they in the pipeline of success?
So the number is relatively low. Right? So each one has their own story, but each of them starts with being at a pain point. So for one, it can be that they've had, kind of their own personal life stories and things that they're dealing with that are dragging them down and stressing them out and keeping them from functioning as fully as they want in their business. For another, it's working way too many hours, that doubling down on work harder, and they need the help to kind of bring themselves back. And they see the journey that I've made and they wanted that help. For someone else, it was a transition point in their entrepreneurship where they really needed to get clarity as to why they were no longer happy and how to get their contentment and fulfillment back that they lost. But so everyone's different, but there's always a bottom that someone's hitting when they reach out for help. And the thing that I have is 20 plus years of experience working with individuals. I have my own personal journey of stuff that I've had to overcome. And then I'm an entrepreneur as well. So, these three things are what allow me to get people who are at the top of their games and are willing to pay to get the results that they need.
And how hard is it when they come to you? Typically, are they on their way down? Do they realize where they're at? Are they on the way to the bottom? Are they already at the bottom? Where do you typically see entrepreneurs who realize, holy cow, I need help. I can't do this on my own. They might not even realize they have a personal issue. They're just tired of banging their heads against the ceiling. And so where do they typically find their own bottom and find you?
No, so that's a great question. And here's the thing to remember about bottoms. Bottoms are contextual. So I can hit a bottom and say, oh my gosh, that was terrible. But we'll accommodate to that bottom and then we'll have another bottom.
Mm.
Right? So I'll give an example from AA,
Mm-hmm.
Alcoholics Anonymous. So when Alcoholics Anonymous was first formed, the members of the founding members all had very, very low bottoms. Lots of struggle and tragedies and wreckage that their lives had. And as they formed their groups and they started working with other people with alcohol problems, what they were able to do was to show people, like, this is what's happening with your drinking. Your bottom doesn't have to be as low as mine. So these are the flagpoles, right? Here's a pain point, here's a pain point, here's a pain point. And as you're crossing these, keep in mind that, it doesn't stop there.
This is where you're heading. Yeah.
And so an individual's bottom, to some extent, really depends on how much it's hurting them and their ability to recognize that they're on a trajectory that is not going to get better.
Yeah.
All right. There's a vector that we're on. There's a trip, there's a journey. And if you don't get off that ride, it's not changing.
What's more important to an entrepreneur, the vision of success or the pain at the bottom? What motivates them more in your experience?
Well, I think when entrepreneurs get started, the vision of freedom is what they want. They desire that, and they are just beasts at being able to work and take risks and do things that most people just don't want any part of, right?
Yeah, they don't even know that exists, that level of engagement. They don't even know it's out there.
Yeah. So their tolerance for being in pain is pretty high.
Okay.
And a lot of times, the message that is that they need to hear is like, you don't have to live like that anymore, right? There's hope. Change is possible. And what you're experiencing now, there's another way to live.
Wow. Yeah. And so the idea of pain tolerance, we think that makes us tough. We think, wow, I can take anything. I just keep going and keep going. But pain is real and it does damage on you. And so I think you didn't say this, but I think I'm inferring here that for entrepreneurs, they are at even greater risk of hitting a harder bottom faster because they're just taking the pain but that pain's doing damage. They don't even know it.
Yeah. So it wrecks relationships.
Yeah.
Wrecks your health and people die.
I know you can't give me examples. I don't want to ask for it, but I'm interested in what success looks like for you. Maybe what you're most proud of when you see it in your I don't know if you're called patients, your coaching participants. What turns you on as far as success on their side when they're moving through the process?
So success, like the ability to define success that I use the most comes from Kathy Kolbe, who runs the Kolbe Corporation, which is a great test for folks. But she says that success is the freedom to be yourself. And the success that I'm looking for with my entrepreneurs when they're working with me is really when they start to get their confidence and their eyes light up. And their energy's up, their confidence is up, their engagement, enthusiasm, inspiration is come. That's just like that makes my day, makes my week, makes my month,
makes your life, and it makes everyone that's come before you proud of you. And I'm wondering, so if that's what success looks like, is there a bullet point, quick list that you can share with our audience of what the symptoms are of underlying pain? When people come to you, they might be saying, I'm struggling with this, this, and this. What are those common symptoms we should be looking for?
So great question. So stress, like everybody has stress. So it's like, when does stress become bad for you? Stress becomes bad when it's starting to interfere with your functioning in your relationships. In burnout, the 3 hallmarks of burnout, and they start small and then they get bigger. But first is that emotional exhaustion. You're no longer juiced up in the morning, and at the end of the day, you're just wiped. Second is cynicism, this sense of just kind of snarky, like the world's no longer really a good place. And then third is no longer feeling like you're good at your job, like your sense of ability to engage and to affect change in your job is getting worse and worse.
Interesting. And so those things are complete contrast to the fact. We didn't get worse at our job. We're actually getting better at our job, and the world is not a terrible place. We know it's a great place, and yet we're feeling those things, and that's an obvious sign that we need to turn something around.
And that exhaustion, right? That emotional exhaustion is crippling.
And we know it shouldn't be there, and that's just not
Sometimes
normal.
We don't know, right? So a lot of times we will rationalize these things away.
Especially when you're just go, and you can handle the pain.
Like you said, with the frog in the water that gets getting hotter and hotter. So we're exhausted because I'm working so much. I'm cynical because all these people are complaining or whatever, and I don't feel like I'm good at my job because I'm constantly having to make decisions, and I'm only looking at the things that are going wrong instead of the things that are going right. Right. Yeah. So we can always justify these things, but to start to get the message that, maybe it's a sign of something else earlier and earlier so that we can do something about it.
What is, for Dr. Astruc, what are you looking for in the future? You're still showing grit. You're an entrepreneur. You're not giving up. You see, and you want to climb and do great things. What's on the horizon that you need to show grit for as you move forward into the next phase of what you're working on?
The next levels for me is that, I'm cutting back more and more in my private practice. And, that's a little bit of a scary process because I'm seeing less patients, and that's where I generate most of my revenue. However, I need to start to clear space to be thinking and strategizing and working on building out your next act. I've got my first 10 one-to-one clients that I'm growing and want to fill that up. There'll be some group coaching that'll be developing after that. But a big piece of what I'm wanting to put out into the world as knowledge and as a benefit to others is really how to more deliberately put happiness into your life. I've got a model for happiness. So energy first, then learning and growing, connecting, the blazing your own trail, and really a commitment to enjoy the ride. And each of these we could take days to unpack, but I want to be talking more and more and showing folks how to design your life around this, no matter where you are in your trajectory. And helping more people to help more people. That's the bottom line.
Yeah. And so staying on task, staying on mission, showing the grit that you need to do, not to fall back into old spaces, not to count on the income of the psychiatrist, in the past, but to follow your dreams and continue to do the work you're doing. That shows grit, and that's entrepreneurial grit. So congratulations on those steps.
No, thanks so much.
So you're in Sarasota. And so
Saratoga,
New York.
Yeah.
And so when you see new patients or new coaching participants, are you seeing them virtually? Is it all locally? And if someone wanted to reach out to you, how would they do so, and how can they interact with you?
So right now everything's being done virtually, and
so anyone in the country can talk to you.
That's right.
Okay,
anyone.
That's a pretty wide audience.
That was when the pandemic hit last June. I said, I've got to go big. And so my target market is all over, and I can now work with anybody who has access to the internet. And where people can find me, ManuelAstruc.com, and that's ManuelAstruc.com, has all my contact information, and there's a little video about what I think is our greatest superpower.
Okay. So check that out. And just a little quick note for us here at Spire to let you know kind of what we do. Dr. Astruc talks about grit and talks about overcoming challenges and realizing when there's just too much on your plate and you need to focus in on what you do best. And I think that's where Spire can help. If you're a small business, a medium-sized business that is trying to get through the hurdles, trying to overcome the challenges that are keeping you from the next stage, we come alongside from a marketing vein and help folks kind of put their strategies in place, the plans in place, generate the revenue that you need to accomplish the dreams that you have. And so that's what we do. We kind of become a team, a part of your business. And so if you need to know more about us, we're at spiread.com. I am Brian Lefelak. I'm the director of sales at Spire, and I'm the host here of Dash of Grit. And I want to thank you, Dr. Astruc, for sharing with us the vulnerability in the past and the story of your sister. And I know, in fact, I'll let you tell me, as she looks at you now and looks down at you now, what do you think she's most proud of in the grit that you've shown?
So I think that she's just smiling and glad that I've got the freedom to be myself.
Yeah, very good. And so I hope that the listeners now are realizing. I will tell you this: when I read the self-inflicted sabotage, I thought that for entrepreneurs that meant I can't do it. I'm stuck. I'm always going to be stuck. I can't get started. And you're completely the opposite. You're thinking that you've already done it and you're about to completely self-destruct and fall apart. And that happiness that you're able to show now is truth and evidence of how, not to let that happen and to fix it if it does. So thank you for sharing. I appreciate you being a guest on Dash of Grit.
It's been a blast. Great interview. Thanks.
Thank you. Folks, we do this once a week. Take a look at the old episodes and please be here for the next one. Until then, get gritty, win the day, and we'll see you next time on Dash of Grit.
This is a Dash of Grit. Recipes for success from courageous leaders who overcome challenges and build great things.